Welcome, everybody, and welcome to our Thursday night coach chat. Tonight's discussion is going to be all about how you utilize those schedules that are on the LA Marathon, really the LA Roadrunner website. And what the heck is that? What are those five LA Marathon schedules, which will also build you up to the Rose Bowl half marathon? The Rose Bowl half is on all of those five schedules on our line. So, at any rate, let's get rolling. And here we go. I always like this. Start with if you have a body, you are an athlete, Bill Bowerman. So, all of you, you are all athletes. That's all there is to it because you have a body. There you go. Um, this is me. I'm a certified level two coach with USA Track and Field and USA Triathlon, and finishing up my RRCA level two. I passed the test. Anyway, this is my sixth season coaching the LA Roadrunners with Lucy, who's our program coordinator, who's doing an amazing job and really helping to grow this thing. And I co-wrote a book. There it is. And anyway, that's me. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of this whole mess. And hang on one sec. There we go. I'm going to get this picture out of the way. There we go. Good. So the question is how do you pick of the five plans? What are they? How do you pick one? And yes, it does have this description online, but I wanted to go into a little deeper dive as we usually do on Thursday nights and kind of explain it and how it works and why it works. And then in the next screen, you're going to learn how everything I'm about to tell you right now could be altered with age. So at any rate, level one, really walkers, run walkers. I kind of broke it down by an approximation of what groups would be in level one, level two, level three, four, and five. That's in the next screen. But for now, you think of yourself as a real beginner, although there's, like I said, a caveat coming up to that. And or maybe it's somebody who's is returning after an injury or something like that. And it's generally speaking walkers, but not necessarily, as you're about to find out in the next slide. But level two includes a little more speed work. Level one, by the way, is 5% high intensity work. So it's pretty minimal high intensity work. Of all the work you do, most of it's just low heart rate. It does include 5%. You'll note the level that increases with each level. Level two is 10%, level three, 15, level four, 20. Level five, we'll get to in a minute. It's 15 again, but it's actually more overall. So you're actually getting even more, although the percentage is lower than the level four, you're actually getting more high level intensity work, a little bit more, but more all over. So that's why we dropped it to 15% high intensity work. But the second level includes a little speed work, a little more speed work. It's a little more advanced beginners who are not new to running, but a group of people that would probably do better with a little less high intensity, but not as little as level one. Level three, now you're talking kind of the middle of the pack sort of person, three and four. 15%, as I said. Those have competed a bunch of other races and they'd like a little more competitive. The more volume you do in general, the faster you get. You could take any one of these as, that's appropriate for you. And you could increase each day, maybe by 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And over the course of the season, that little increase every day will really add up and will give you, generally speaking, a little greater fitness as long as you do throw in those days off and those lesser days, less volume. And of course, every third or fourth week, whatever, you're throwing in a taper week where you're doing way less for an entire week. Those are really critical, as I'm going to tell you later on, for recovery. We'll get into that, like I said, in a minute. Level four is really considered more of like optimal training. 80/20, you might have heard of that. There's a great book by Matt Fitzgerald called 80/20. That's the name of the book. And really, what it says is 80% for marathon training, 80% all aerobic, low heart rate, easy pace, we call it, and 20% high intensity is considered optimal. Some of the early runners who used to win Boston and New York and whatever, they used to go out and run, and they later on they looked at all of their schedules and they found, lo and behold, they were doing kind of 80/20 percentage, 80% low heart rate, just jogging along, and 20% high heart rate in their workouts they found in their digests. Um, Level five. Now, this is really more of a competitive plan. Um, it's good for those who really want to be competitive in their age group. Then maybe you want to do a PR. You're getting more volume overall. The percentage of intensity, like I said, is less, but the volume of intensity is more because you're just doing more of everything. There is a level six, as you're about to hear me talk about in a minute. That is not published. That is really for, well, you'll see, for really the fastest people who really want to be very competitive. And I'll show you a bit of that. Um, Once again, people make a mistake. And that's this line down here. People make a mistake and they pick a plan. This is what I want to do. And I hear this from people that I used to coach privately. I want to build up to a 4 hour marathon. Well, where are you now? And well, I just did a 4:30 or a 5 hour or whatever, and I want to do a 4 hour. Well, okay, I've had people who've grown an hour and a half between their PR, personal record, their fastest time, and where they want to be. But the key is you want to pick a plan where you are currently and build from that and not pick a plan where you want to be. And here's the reason. Because if you're doing your work too much, too high a heart rate, you can end up not building endurance. Remember, I talked about last week, and I'm going to talk about this in 2 weeks at greater length. Um, you want to build a training plan, mostly that 80% or more, where you're going to utilize more fat. More fat is a more abundant reservoir for fuel, and that's going to take you farther, right? That's, pardon me, that's what we call endurance. So, if you're picking a plan that may be too aggressive, too much high heart rate work, too high a percentage of high intensity work, you're probably not going to be getting enough or as much endurance as what you may need or whatever. Or you might even get yourself injured. We're going to talk about that in the next slide. So pick a schedule and training group based on where you are now, not where you want to be in the future. Okay. All right. So moving on. Generally speaking, and as you're about to hear, there's a caveat to this. Generally speaking, level one, I'm starting at the bottom here. Level one, usually that's like walk seven is our 8 hour marathon group, to a faster level, walk three. Walk three to walk seven is usually level one. And like I said, I'm going to discuss why that may not fit in a minute. But level two, generally run walk four, run walk five, and then walk two. Okay, walk one, you'll note, is in level three. Why is walk one in level three and not in level two? Because it's clearly, run walk five, then level walk one. Well, it doesn't really work that way because walk one is actually 5:45 pace, which is the equivalent of, I believe, it's either run walk two or run walk three. So, unlike walk two, walk one is actually on the level three schedule. Okay. Just because it is a really, really fast walking group. Walk two is a 6 hour walking group, but that's still within the level two category. Okay. Like I said, there are caveats to all of this I'm going to go over in a minute. Um, Level three, generally run 10 and then run walk one, two, three, and walk one. All right. Level four, usually run five to run nine. Level five, run 1B. Now you'll note 1B in level six, they kind of have the option. It's the more you do, the faster you can get, but also the more you do, the greater the risk of injury. So there is that as well. They're kind of in both camps. They can pick and choose what they want. If they don't want to risk injury, they may want to check the level five. That's run walk 1B. 1B, it finishes the marathon at a 3:20 marathon finish time. Run two is our 3:30, and then all the way to run four, which is our 4 hour group, is level five. That's a pretty high level. That's our 80-20 group. Pretty high level of volume. Now, level six, which is not online, you cannot find this. It is on my computer, and you have to be on my list. And I need to email this out. I need to actually finish it. I know I screwed something up, and I need to finish it, fix it, I should say. But level six gets up for group run zero, which is our, like I said, the 3 hour group. Levels run zero gets up to about an 80, 81 mile peak week. So that's going to injure most of our athletes. That's why we don't post it online. That's why you don't see it. That's why you need to send me an email and I'll send it to you. But it'll come with the caveat, don't do this if you're not in level one or 1A. And then 1B, the 320 group, think twice about it. Level six groups, all those athletes and pace leaders will be in Corral A. It is a very special group of people that get into Corral A. The rest of us cannot get into Corral A. Corral A is 3:20 and faster. If you're not doing a marathon finish at 3:20 or faster, you do not want to be. This is where the people who win the marathon, they're in Corral A. They're the front of Corral A. So you don't want to be in Corral A and get trampled, okay? Um, at any rate, honestly, all of the roadrunners are welcome to be in Corral B, but Corral B is for 3:30 to 3:50 marathoners. And unless you're a 350 to 3:30 to 3:50 marathoner, I really don't recommend, I cannot urge you enough, don't go in Corral B on marathon race day. There are no real corrals on the Rose Bowl half. People do file in based on pace, based on finish times, but there are no real corrals to divide them. At any rate, um, Corral B, I hear horror stories of people get their shoulders bumped because they're much, much slower than the 3:30 to 3:50 marathon finishers. It is a perk. There are some people that buy LA Roadrunner, not many, LA Roadrunner registration because they want to be in Corral B. God love them. Only our pace leaders the only pace leaders in Corral B and the LA Marathon race day will be 3:30 to 3:50 pace leaders. All the other pace leaders will be, well, I talked about Corral A, all the other pace leaders will be in slower or even open corrals. The slowest closed corral is Corral E, and anyone slower than a 5 hour, they're pace leaders, and I do recommend go in the open corrals. That's where I would start. That's what I recommend. You won't have as much crazy people pulling you to go out too fast. You'll be able to go out at a reasonable pace, and you get through the crowds reasonably quickly. But yeah, I would slower than 5 hours. I'd recommend the open corrals. That's where all of our slower than 5 hour pace leaders will be. We'll talk about more of that as we get closer to the LA Marathon. We now have 25 weeks left to go. So I think we got some time. So that's that. Now this yellow thing that I've been talking about here, this caveat. Um, Pick a schedule based on age. What the heck? I just went through this long harangue, level one, two through five schedule, all about this beginner, walker, advanced, competitive, all this. And now I'm telling you, screw that. Pick a schedule based on age. Well, all of this stuff still holds true to a point. Here's the problem. In the past and in most training programs, and all training programs are great. I don't mean to belittle any training programs. They all bring more and more people to greater health and bring their society to greater health and bring people from all walks of life together who would normally never be able to stand shoulder and shoulder with a common goal. And I think that's a wonderful thing that brings society together. All training programs, all clubs are wonderful. But one of the complaints that I have about schedules is they oftentimes use terms like beginner, intermediate, advanced. Here's the problem based on age. As you get older, say 60s, 70s, 80s, you can still do a marathon in most cases, in many cases. I don't know about 80s, it's hit and miss, but if you keep training and you keep doing it, you don't lose that ability. In many cases, you can continue on unless you get a lifelong injury. At any rate, you get, as you age, less and less hormones that rebuild muscle tissue, specifically human growth hormone, where you're growing, you're rebuilding the cells, the protein cells that make up your muscle. You have these little tiny filaments, and each filament is a strand of single beads of protein, like a beaded necklace, but they're protein molecules. That's how small these things are, just single protein molecules webbed together, so to speak. And that's a bunch of these filaments make up the sarcomere, and billions of these little sarcomeres make up muscle groups, and several muscle groups make up the muscle. All right, and on and on, and there are subdivisions that I'm not even getting into. It's just all protein, but you need to rebuild. If like bodybuilding, you're breaking up muscle tissue. Running is similar. You're breaking up muscle tissue. You need to rebuild muscle tissue faster than you're breaking it down. So if you don't have enough hormones to rebuild muscle tissue fast enough, so you're breaking down more and more and more and more muscle tissue, and it's getting worse and worse and worse, that's where injuries occur. Soreness, you've broken up some muscle tissue, that's soreness. Break up a lot of muscle tissue, that's injury. Got it? It's not like, oh, I stepped off a curb and suddenly I pulled a muscle. Usually you've been breaking up those muscle filaments a long time and it's worse and worse and worse. And finally, the final straw suddenly gave you pain. That's usually what happens. I mean, yes, there are times when someone, sprains their ankle or does something that's catastrophic, whatever. Usually that's kind of what's going on when you tear a muscle or whatever. You've already damaged it a little bit. So if you're not rebuilding, if you don't have enough hormones to rebuild muscle tissue quickly enough, and that also defines ability. Generally speaking, it's not about strength, but those who can rebuild muscle tissue quick enough can do more. And those who can do more, generally speaking, are those who get faster. So you'll find those who are, if you want to win the LA Marathon, you need to get up to about 140 miles a week, which for most of you at our average ages, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and of course, be above that. But even at our average ages in LA Roadrunners, most of you would be injured trying to do 140 miles in a week. Um, I had a guy who just got up to like 120. He does an enormous volume of strength training. So, I mean, huge. I didn't even remember all the stuff he does every day, and he switches it off. But I mean, every day, a huge volume of strength training. He was able to do that at 51, which is really extraordinary and really a commitment. But most of us, by the way, women, testosterone helps rebuild and all of this helps with functionality of rebuilding and recovery. At any rate, women have about a fourth the testosterone level to that of men. So even women, we're not just talking men, we're talking women as well. The ability to rebuild muscle tissue is some cases dependent upon age. Okay. So, with that understanding, a 71-year-old a 72-year-old I had years ago that I coached privately, she wanted to do more high intensity, more volume, all of that. I held her to, it was a personalized schedule, so it wasn't the level one schedule at all, but it had the same high intensity percentages, the 5% only percentage of high intensity and the rest, 95%, similar to the level one schedule, very similar. It had the low intensity work. And I said to her, she was injury prone, 72 years old. And I said, do this schedule. You'll get to the starting line uninjured. She's always getting injured. You'll get there uninjured. You'll win your age group. Big marathon, big race. She got to the starting line uninjured. She won her marathon and she finished as exhausted as she was, saying, I could have gone faster. I could have done more training. At any rate, um, she won her age group. And had within a decade, a PR at that time. But so there are caveats to this based on age that I don't want to just categorize by group. That's why you don't really have a definitive explanation online. And by the way, the reverse of that, that 72-year-old did, like dozens and dozens of marathons. You could get somebody who's done 100 marathons in their senior years, and suddenly, they want to be on a level one schedule because they can only do so much high intensity work, right? Because they need to recover. And they're not a beginner at all. They're an advanced, but they're on what you might consider a lesser, level one schedule, right? Less high intensity work, less volume. On the other hand, someone who's a 20 something who generates a ton of growth hormone, a ton of all these other creatine kinase and other hormone levels of testosterone, they're clearly a beginner, never done a marathon before, and yet they could be on what you would call an advanced schedule where you're doing 20% high intensity work or even a level 5 or 6 a schedule. I'd be questioning the level 6 schedule to someone who's never done it before, but certainly a level 5 schedule. And they could theoretically be strong enough and have enough hormone levels to do that level 5 schedule, that higher volume of high intensity work. So the terms beginner, intermediate, advanced just don't make sense when you bring age into it. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't make sense when you consider age. So, at any rate, take all of those things into consideration when you pick a schedule And here's, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of schedules really quickly. Um, Easy pace, of course, is different for everybody. I can't tell, it's all about heart rate, honestly, but I can't tell you what your heart rate should be at any one of these levels. And the problem with that is, even though you're running in a group with the same ability levels in that group, the problem is that group, the people in that group could have larger hearts or smaller hearts. You have larger people, you have smaller people. Larger hearts will push more blood with one thrust, right? We call it stroke rate, higher stroke rate with larger hearts. As you progress in training, your lower left ventricle expands, so you get a large. That's the part of the heart that pushes the blood through to all the little veins and arteries that go out in your body, all of the extremities, your hands, your feet, all over. And there are other things just besides your heart that enables that blood to go thousands of miles of veins and arteries. These little tubes that go through your body are thousands of miles. That little pump alone can't do that. There are many other things we'll go into another time that actually push that blood. But in general, the heart rate can be dependent on size of the heart, which gets bigger, like I said, with more and more and more training. Your lower left ventricle increases in size. And actually, decades ago, they used to look at marathoners and they thought, doctors did, they thought, oh my God, marathoners all have enlarged lower left ventricles. And heart attack patients all have enlarged lower left ventricles. My God, marathoners must be heart attack victims. This is can't be. You can't do marathons. Well, what they found out is that heart attack victims have other things like clogged veins and arteries, where the heart is pushing harder to get the same blood flow through narrowed veins and arteries and all sorts of things. But actually, we marathoners, as it turned out, are enormously more healthy than our enlarged lower left ventricled heart diseased counterparts. We're the healthy, they're not. They need to do what we are doing, but that's another story. At any rate, and there are all sorts of studies that show this nowadays, but that's honestly what medical doctors used to think decades ago, just as a little aside story. All right. So, zone two, easy pace. This is really comfort zone level where you could just keep going forever, that pace. Beginners are going to feel a little more stress, even at zone two, until you build more of that aerobic base, which I'll show you in next 2 weeks from now, what that is. But try and find a zone where, or easy pace where you could talk fluidly without pauses for breathing, like I'm talking now, where this is way too fast because I'm conscious of and aware of my breathing rate. Got it? That's way too fast. That's not zone two. That's not 65% of your maximum ability level. Your max, not your VO2 max, but your maximum ability level, also called zone two. And if you go on YouTube, you'll hear all these discussions on podcast, pardon me, podcasts on zone two training. That's the 80% of the 80/20, but that's another story. At any rate, that's most of our training, almost all of what we're doing on Saturday or Sunday mornings, depending on the location that you're at. Balboa Park, obviously, the Sunday, the other two Saturdays. Um, MRP stands for Marathon Race Pace. Now you're up to about 65, 70%. You're now in zone three. You're can actually be a minute to a minute and a half faster. This is run groups. minute to a minute and a half faster than easy pace. Now, run walk, this gets complicated. Run walk, marathon race pace can actually be kind of in the middle of that easy pace range. Got it? So, run walk groups do well to, all the groups do well to train a little at the higher end of that zone and the lower end of that zone. But especially, it's a little more confusing with run walk groups. Walk groups end up that their easy pace actually, believe it or not, is faster than their marathon race pace. That aerobic zone is sort of the training zone, I should say, is faster, not their aerobic zone, their training zone ends up being faster than their marathon race pace. Early season, most of our pace leaders doing walk only start out a little slower and they kind of build up a speed with the season a little bit more and more, a little more as the season progresses. But that's our walking program. But yeah, you will eventually, hopefully, end up walking faster in training, unlike the run only counterpart that runs slower in training than you do on race day. All right. HMRP, pretty simple, half marathon race pace. Now you're really looking at only about 10 seconds per mile faster. I know you're getting like big jumps in percentages, but you're now like 70, 75%. You're still at zone three. Like I said, it's not a huge jump in pace, 10, 15% max. 15 would be more of a slower group. Um, Zone three, you're more like the high end of zone three from marathon race pace. So you're in half, HMRP, half marathon race pace. Okay. Threshold. Now you're kind of looking at like a slow 10K, a little slower than 10K. Now you're in zone, low level zone four. Now talking about 75, 80%. And these things are very relative. And, what is 75, 80%? Well, that's very individualized. You're looking at like threshold pace would be like, what can you do in 1 or 2 miles to like, excuse me, 1 mile, that's 1600 meters, to like 10K. 10K would be like 6.2 miles. 1 mile to like 6.2. What would that, what would that be? That would be your threshold pace. Now, interval pace, you're faster still by about 15, 20 seconds. You're faster. So you're now at the high end of zone four, 80 to 85%. Now you're really pushing it. Um, Call it 800 meters is half a mile, 1600 meters is a mile. So you're looking at you're looking at half a mile to a mile. That's twice around a track to 4 times around a track. What you can do at pretty much top speed to do that distance, right? You're looking at faster than 10K pace there. You're looking at 5 to 10K pace there, faster than 10K. Um, Repetition or R pace, by the way, interval pace, I pace, threshold pace, T pace, get it? T pace, threshold, I pace, interval, R pace, repetition, got it? All right. R pace, faster still. Now you're talking more of like a track workout. R pace is more of like the 2 minute runs that really, now you're talking about speed. You're not talking about raising your threshold like a threshold run where you're going to utilize more of um, fat, a more abundant reservoir. That's what threshold pace is all about. You can use fat at a higher heart rate, at a higher speed, higher intensity. I shouldn't say speed because when you're going up a hill, it's all relative. You want to slow down on that uphill. At any rate, it's about heart rate. At a higher intensity, higher heart rate, you're going to raise the bar on where you're still using fat because fat is a more abundant resource of fuel, right? For fuel, you can go farther faster. Pretty simple. That's what threshold's all about. Repetition is, yes, it does a little of that, but it's really more about recruiting more faster muscles. You have these fast twitch muscles and slow twitch muscles, And repetition pace is about half of your muscles are dormant. Because if they weren't dormant, you would have to feed them, right? And like example, I remember hearing Michael Phelps, the swimmer, who does all this fast and slow swimming. It's a very similar sense of training, but he's in a pool. We're running or walking and walking. Um, but you would get up to about 6,000 calories a day, where the average size guy is about 2,000 calories a day. I'm supposedly a little below that. Um, so that is huge. So when you start recruiting more and more muscles, you need to feed them or they become dormant. That's what hundreds of thousands of years, true, really over 2 million years of human evolution, most of those years where we didn't have a grocery store, no Piggly Wiggly, if you know that place, grocery store in Florida, I think, and on the South. At any rate, um, none of those grocery stores like Erewhon. We had snow. And it's that white stuff. It's very cold that lands on the ground, piles up, and kills everything, right? For 2+ million years of human evolution, most of us encountered snow, our ancestors, um, and that snow killed the crops. So you went through periods of some starvation where your body needed to shut down muscle tissue in order to survive hunger, right? You're not going to engage all your muscles and be a Michael Phelps and need 6,000 calories a day when you're in a snowy area with no refrigerator and no Piggly Wiggly grocery store. You're not going to survive. And yet we humans adapted that much. We are an extremely adaptable race. Species, I should say. We human beings, all of us. And that was one way we adapted. We shut down muscles. So half your muscles are dormant. And when you run fast, you engage faster muscles. And that's more of what our pace does. That was a long harangue to get to that point. I'm sorry. At any rate, um, I also use, if you want to pick a group, to find a group, there are a couple ways to do that, or find out what your paces may be. All the same thing. Do either a race or go out and do a time trial. Could be 2, 3 miles, whatever, 5K. Um, whatever distance run that distance, time it. If you have a Garmin watch, it could just be a fast effort that you did recently that you have on your pace distance watch. I shouldn't say Garmin. Garmin is a brand. I'm wearing a Coros, but at any rate, um, a lot of these brands are great. Sunto makes some great watches. Wahoo has a decent watch. Um, I'm not that fond of the Apple system. They make true to form with Apple, they make great hardware. They just don't have the software integrated. True to form of Apple products, their software is not their own. And it's not integrated to get like recovery time and things, but data. But at any rate, enough. That's a whole other lecture. Um, do a time trial, or have one on your watch already if you do. There's an app called V-Dot Calculator. You can go to any app store and you can find it. It's this little green and white. You're looking at it backwards. That whoops, I just hit the wrong button. Um, that little green V dot right there, if you can kind of see it, there it is. V dot calculator, any app store with a white background. It's free. You can pay to get rid of the advertisements, which only come along rarely. And you can just really don't pay to get rid of the advertisements, like $15 or something. You just click on the little X and the advertisement is gone, you know. Um, at any rate, and you can take that and as a calculator, you can, I'll show you, turn it on, and the calculator will basically, well, you can't really see it. Yeah, not coming up very well. But at any rate, and it's backwards. Anyway, you plug in the distance or other distance other than marathon, half marathon, 5K, 10K, whatever. And then which would be right here, there's the list of different paces and other is at the bottom. I don't know. You can't really see that very well. And then VDOT calculator, you plug in your time as the next thing and hit calculate, and it'll give you your approximate paces for training, the tabs at the bottom, approximate paces for training based on, on your individual background training history. Those paces will be faster or slower a little bit. It's not exact by any stretch of the imagination, but it will also give you an approximated marathon finish time if you kind of do a reasonable schedule, a reasonable volume, similar to what's on our schedules. Um, it would get you, and that in that sense, it would give you the group that you can start training with, at least an idea of putting you in the right ballpark to get that easy zone on Saturday morning. And then from there, you're pretty close. You can always stop and wait for the next slower group if you're feeling yourself breathing even a little bit too hard. All of these groups, their paces overlap. Um, so yeah, jump in the next group a little slower. And that app can really help you kind of calculate paces and what group to go into to some degree. If you don't want to do that, you can take just a stopwatch or just a any wristwatch that has time on it. Most most watches hopefully have time on them. I know you have to flip some windows maybe to get to it, but geez, boy, modern day contrivances. Anyway, go for about 20 minutes at really, basically at pretty comfortable, easy pace, just to kind of warm up, and then go at the pace where you want to see your heart rate. And check out the, obviously you'd need a heart rate monitor to do that, but um, take your heart rate monitor or a strap. The wrist-based heart rate aren't the best. They're kind of close, not bad, but meh. Chest straps are still the best. The straps on your arm that go around, the Whoop strap or any number of straps are fairly good. I'm hearing great things about the Whoop strap that will integrate with watches and your computer and all that and your cell phone. But and Apple Watches do get fairly good heart rate. I got to say that about them. Um, the rest, yeah, but heart rate they do pretty well with. Even in open water swimming, their heart rate was really good compared to some of the other watches, which is pretty extraordinary. And their GPS in open water was pretty extraordinary as well for Apple systems watches. At any rate, um, so take a look at your heart rate. What is your average heart rate when you're going after 20 minutes? And then don't stop, just keep going. And each pace that you're going at for the next several minutes, that will give you that easy pace, marathon race pace, HMRP, T pace, I pace, R pace, whatever it is, you can calculate your paces based on going 20 minutes and then look at your watch because heart rate is actually better, better calculator, better litmus test of where you want to be in training than pace, specifically because of all sorts of different things. But when you're going up a hill, your heart rate's going to go up. And if it's all about heart rate, then pace goes out the window when you're going up a hill because you're going to need to slow down, right? If you take all the hills on the LA Marathon and the first 6 miles of the LA Marathon, as you are about to learn from doing the first 6 miles of the LA Marathon, if you take them all at pace, marathon race pace, average marathon race pace, you're going to burn out and you'll hit the wall. You'll run out of glycogen. The carbohydrate turns into glycogen. And Not going to work. You need to slow down. It's about heart rate. Heart rate governs what fuel, excuse me, what resource for fuel you're using more of. Got it? Okay. So enough of that. Um, and there you go. Um, Oh, and then do the test once you do the 20-minute warm up. Do the test for another 20 minutes and see what where your heart rate range is in that next 20 minutes. So, and that'll give you some good heart rate training. So you'll know what your zones are and all that. Some watches even have an algorithm to calculate zones. Depends on the watch. I don't know that those algorithms that calculate anticipated marathon finish times or zones are that accurate, especially if you're only using a wrist-based occipital reader, heart rate reader in your wrist. That's what they're called, occipital readers. Um, then your data is even more questionable. Got it? Okay. Moving on. Um, Now, I want to take a look at the schedule. This is next week's schedule. This is the level three schedule. And I want to look at Monday and Wednesday. Obviously, they're critical days. By the way, this is my version. When I look at my schedule, this is what it looks like. This is an Excel spreadsheet. I just took 1 week. I just copied it, pasted it. Um, and I'll go over it with you a little bit. The schedules online, all this other stuff, these other columns and this column. My wife even said, "Oh God, that's way too complicated. Get rid of all of that." If you ever want, and these are based on VDOT for this group theoretically with a certain marathon finish time. This was I forgot what group. It's a level three. I forgot. I want to say it's run walk three. I'm not sure. Anyway, um, it's a marathon pace of about 12-minute per mile pace. But at any rate, which would be about a 5 hour something, 5:15. Anyway, all right. You'll note it's hard day, a lot of T-pace stuff, then easy day or day off, excuse me, then a lot of hard T-pace stuff, and then 40 minutes easy day off, and then you get higher mileage and you continue on with easy pace day, but strength training. Okay. So, what does this mean? 3 times 3 minutes at T pace to 2 times HMRP to 4 minutes T pace and then 10 minutes easy pace. What the heck in God's name is that? Well, let me explain. T pace, excuse me, the 10-minute easy pace is really just a warm up. The 10-minute easy pace at the end is just your cool down. So you got to warm up 10 minutes easy, cool down 10 minutes easy. So what the heck though? That's simple. What the heck is 3 times 3 minutes at T pace to 2 minutes at HMRP, or what I used to use as a term, um, off, 3 minutes, 3 times 3 minutes at T pace off 2 minutes HMRP. What that means is, of course, 3 times you're doing this circle, this cycle, I should say, this cycle. It's not a circle. Even an oval track is an oval. Anyway, you're doing 3 sets of 3 minutes at T pace, and then in between all three, you're doing 3 minutes T pace, then 2 minutes half marathon race pace. So that's significantly slower. So you're getting a little low heart rate, what we might refer to as off time, but that became confusing to a lot of people when I said off, this, off, that. That became confusing because it's not off time. You're still moving at half marathon race pace, right? So this is all nonstop from the 10 minutes easy to the 10 minutes easy, all nonstop. unless you have to stop, and then and in that case, stop. It's okay. But if you can do it all together to keep your heart rate, it's all about higher heart rate elevated for longer periods of time. As we progress, those 3 minutes are going to get to 4 minutes and 5 minutes and 6:30 and seven and on and on and on until you hit 20 minutes at T pace. Um, but 3 minutes T pace, then 2 minutes half marathon race pace, 3 minutes at T pace, 2 minutes half marathon race pace, and then the third set, 3 minutes at T pace, 2 minutes at half marathon race pace, and then transition into a little slower than T pace, excuse me, then a little longer than the 3 minutes at T pace. You're now going 4 minutes at threshold pace and then slow it way, way down. And you're doing 10 minutes easy. That's the recovery, right? And similar over here, you're doing this is nonstop also. Not all of these are nonstop. Um, like this one, 5 miles, that's pretty much nonstop, but it's all easy pace. It's all just slow, kind of jogging, whatever. Um, so Monday is a warm up. Once again, you'll note easy pace at the beginning, 15 minutes, easy pace at the end, 10 minutes. So warm up, cool down. Then you got your 3 minutes at T pace, right? A little higher heart rate. 2 minutes at half marathon race pace, little recovery, although it's still pretty fast. And then 2 minutes at T pace and 2 minutes HMRP recovery, right? So fast, slow on that one too. And every week it's got something like that, though, like I said, the times and the volume of repetitions are going to increase as you build up more and more and more and more and more throughout the entire week. Your 4 miles that you're going to do this week will eventually build up to 5 miles that you're going to do next week, right? This Saturday, this Sunday, you'll do 4 miles. Next, the week after, you'll do five. So there you have that. That's just how to do the work. And you'll notice that even week two, this is the 24th week, which is week two. I like to count down. I know all schedules start the first week is week one. I asked Lucy to not do that this year when she reposted my workouts online. And the reason is because I think most people don't care about how many weeks they're into a program. They want to know how many weeks they have to go, right? What's left? How much time do I have before I finish the exam or have to finish my term paper or before the class is over for the season? That's what we want to know. We want to know the finish time. We don't want to know how long we've been doing this, right? That's kind of a monotonous, pointless number. But most schedules do start, the beginning is week one, two, three, on and on and on. I just think most people don't want to know that. All right. So you could see in the left and right corner, 24 weeks to go. And this week in particular grew 9.4% increase in total volume. If you saw this week's schedule, it would be 9.4% less volume than the week that you're about to do the week later, right? With 24 weeks to go to the marathon. And also, you can take a look at the percentages. This schedule, I don't claim to need to be perfect. I find perfection destroys perfectly, but you're looking at this was level three, which is 85-15 schedule, 15% high heart rate, 15%. Well, I got an 85.4 and a 14.6. So I'm calling it over here 85-15. All right. So other schedules all other weeks, I should say, are a little off from all of that. But there you have it. And on my schedule, I really want to look at what kind of volume are we doing easy pace? What kind of volume are we doing threshold pace? On and on and on, marathon race pace. There is no this particular week, no I pace or excuse me, yeah, I pace or R pace, the bottom two. So there you go. That's a week of schedule and what it means, 3 times 3 minutes at T pace, and then you do 2 minutes HMRP, and then do 3 sets of that. Then you jump to 4 minutes at T pace, and then 2 minutes, 10 minutes easy at the end, and 10 minutes at the beginning, easy pace. Um, all good. Hopefully that makes sense. Sunday, strength train. Pick movements that you need for you, right? I mean, if your one leg is stronger than the other, then you may need to do one-legged squats or with a dumbbell in one hand or whatever. Or one-legged bridge where you're on your back and raising your one leg off the ground. One-legged anything to rebuild the one weaker leg, and always do the same the same weight or same uh, level of stress on your body, do the same level of that on both legs. Equal out the stress levels, the weight level on both legs if you have an imbalance. Um, with that, here we go. With that, I say, whoops, what happened there? Um, I I missed something in there. Wait a minute. What happened? Well, all right. Anyway, with that, I say, um, there it is. I say thank you all for coming. And whoops, oh, I just realized I forgot to put in my final goodbye slide. At any rate, thank you all for coming. I'm going to answer some questions that we have in our chat. I'll stop sharing this for now. And oh, my hair is a disaster. Anyway, um, let me check out what we got in the chat and anything appropriate for this topic. I'll answer. Sorry for going on in that long harangue. Um, Angela, my very first running partner was 82. He was a tough cookie, I'll bet, but I'll bet he needed to do less volume overall. Maybe he did 3 days a week, maybe even 2 days a week. Um, or the 4 days a week were probably less volume overall, but I bet he did less volume. Vanessa, is it okay recommended to train during a week on a treadmill? Yeah, I train on treadmill all the time. We have a little gym in my apartment complex with a treadmill. Um, but you do use slightly different muscles. And remember, I said half your muscles are dormant. Well, you do recruit slightly different muscles when you're or use them on a treadmill versus running on land. So make sure that you do run on land a fair amount of the time, especially with us, of course. That's all we do. Um, to build those muscles that you will use to run on land with. Example, you may find if you did all of your runs on land, running on a treadmill would be slower and more difficult. If you did all of your runs on a treadmill, you might find running on land might be slower and more difficult. So it really depends. You're using the muscles you use on one little different from the other. Got it? Treadmill versus land. Okay. iPad, um, would you please explain the run walk groups to me? Do they run so many minutes, then walk so many minutes? Are you allowed to jog the whole time if you want? Um, I like to tell my run walk groups that when you're going up a big hill, like when we eventually go up Amalfi, which is a really big hill, really close to us in Santa Monica where we meet, or um, T Rex. T Rex in Griffith Park is something that will drag the Santa Monica group over to do eventually, and even invite the Balboa Park group. That is also a really big hill, 1 mile of just solid, unrelenting, pretty steep hill of hell. Um, and you definitely want to change your pace for that one. The run walk intervals don't work on something like that because it's all about heart rate. If you're doing something like 3-1, for example, or even 2-1, whatever, you may find your heart rate is elevated too long. You're going to find stuff like that in downtown LA, climbing out of downtown LA, because on the marathon, downtown LA is sort of a gully, right? Where you go down into it and then you got to climb out of it within the first 6 miles of the LA Marathon, hair over that, but 6 miles. But so, yeah, I think in some cases it's better to do walk, run than with a big hill, than run, walk, because it's more about heart rate. Got it. The intervals run walk can help calculate out what to do. But for example, generally speaking, except for hills, heat, and headwinds, generally speaking, run walk groups, group run walk five, depending on Balboa, Griffith Park, or whatever. Although the group numbers are not all there in Balboa Park or Griffith Park, but they are in Santa Monica. So if you have all the run walk groups in Santa Monica, which we do, run walk five would basically be 1-1. You run 1 minute, you walk 1 minute. Now there's a caveat even to this, but group two would basically be you run 2 minutes, you walk 1 minute. Three, you run 3 minutes, you walk 1 minute. Four, you're walking about 4 minutes and walking, excuse me, running 4 minutes, walking 1 minute. And level five gets to be complicated because that one you could really do level five either like a 5 minute run and 1 minute walk, or like even a 10-minute run, 1 minute walk, depending on where that level five is in the season of training, in periodization of training. Periodization means you do different periods of time and do different things within them. That's periodization training. It's what we do, what all training programs do. Um, yeah, Maria, hi, coach. The recording is still on. Yes. Thank you, Enrique. iPad, thank you so much. Great. All right. I'm going to turn off. I don't see any more in the chat. I'm going to turn off the recording. So, those of you at home watching this live, please stay online. I'm going to go on longer. Those of you at home watching the recorded version of this, I do want to say goodbye to you watching the recorded version. And we will see you next Thursday night for more exciting adventures in what the heck is all this science about for marathon training. For those of you watching the recording, good night. For those of you watching it at live, hang on. We'll get more questions. Bye to you guys watching the recording.